Hey, what's up guys? It's me, Devin Stain, and here I'm with another video for you guys. This is a Unity 3D tutorial. This is actually, I mentioned I would do something like this in my Game Maker Studio 2 tutorial. Today I'm gonna be teaching you, or any beginners watching this video, how to make a cube or any sort of object move around in the game. So anyways, let's get started. First you want to create a new 3D cube. Let's reset the transform and let's lift up our camera a bit. That looks about right. Then let's just scale it to something like 5 by no, that's wrong. Don't change the Y to 5, change the Y to, okay, the Y to something like 1, change the Z to 10. You know what, just make the X 10 as well, because, you know, why not? Drag the camera a bit forward, drag it up, and change the rotation on the X axis so it's looking down. That looks about good. Next, we want to go into the project folder, or into the project tab, and create a new folder called materials. And in here, we want to create a new material, call it ground mat. Drag it onto the ground and give it a color of green. That seems good enough. Next, duplicate, no, you don't want to duplicate it, you want to make a new one. Make a new material, call it player mat. Change this one's color to something like red. And rename this cube to something like ground. Next, you want to create a new cube and just lift it up a bit on the Y and give it a bit of space on the top of the ground and drag on the player mat. We can rename this to player. We can rename this to player. Okay, cool, there we go. We now have a materials folder and we now have a basic scene set up. I don't like the regular skybox, so click on your main camera, click on clear flags, go to solid color and change the color to a light blue or so. There we go. So if you click on it and you press shift space, we can view it in full screen mode and everything's looking pretty good. But when we run the game, as you can see, absolutely nothing happens. It's like a still image. So click on your player object, click add component, rigid body. Now when we play, our character falls. And that's pretty cool and all, but we still can't move our character. So in order to do that, we need to go to create a new folder, call it scripts. And unlike Game Maker, Unity does not have drag and drop, so you need to know your stuff. And we're gonna select C# script. Name it something like player controller script. I like to end my scripts with script, cause you know, why not? Go to, and now let's click open to open it up in our preferred code editor. I use MonoDevelop. I recently switched back to MonoDevelop from Visual Studio, because Visual Studio is giving me a bit of problems, or a few problems, so I just decided to switch back to MonoDevelop. And it's good because MonoDevelop doesn't it doesn't autocomplete methods for you. Now this might look scary at first, but don't worry, don't follow these, they're not that reliable. So let's just clear all the code. So what you want to do is you want to say public float move speed. Now what we've done is we've made a float with a modifier of public and we've called it move speed. Now create the start method. Oh yeah, create the start method and in here set move speed equal to 5f. Now the start method gets called when the game when you run the game. So it's useful for initialization and other things related to initialization. And so next we need to create void update. Void update. Now update gets called every frame. So let's just add a few comments. We've declared a move speed float variable. This gets called when the game runs at first. We have set move speed equal to 5. This method gets called every frame. And now we can go to our code. It's good to comment your code for any beginners watching, because someday you might want to go back and check your code, but you might not have you might not know what's happening. So now in the update method we say transform dot translate move speed multiplied by input dot get axis horizontal multiplied by time dot that's time dot delta time. Put 0f and copy this code. I remember I said in my Game Maker tutorial I hate copying and pasting, but this is an exception because we're pretty much doing the exact same thing. And in here we can just close this off, and here we can just say vertical. So now this all might be Greek to you, but let me put a comment here that says we are moving the player by Unity's built-in input system, and time dot delta time fixes the frame rate so it doesn't really differ. Let me go more in depth. Time dot delta time, multiplying or doing whatever with time dot delta time basically makes it so that we have a fast computer and a very slow computer. Now in theory update goes every frame, right? So if we have a computer that's running at 10 frames per second, the cube will move much slower than a computer going at 60 frames per second, because the update method gets called once every frame, and your frame rate depends on your GPU. Now my computer can technically be classed as a supercomputer, and that means I'll get very high frame rates, but some other computers might differ, so we multiply it by time dot delta time to get rid of the unfair advantage that we have. So next we save it by pressing Ctrl S, and we head back into Unity, and when we run the game, as you can see, when we press W, A, S, and D and the arrow keys, nothing happens at all, and I can tell you why. Don't panic though. Go into your player and just look at the components. We don't have our script component actually attached to our player, so what you want to do is you just want to drag it onto your player. Now when you click play, you can see that our cube moves around. This is cool and all, but when we press, well, we can go to jump, but we don't jump at all. So let's fix that. Go into your class and make a few more variables. Make a public bool, which is a value that returns true or false, and call it onGround. Next, make a private rigid body and call it RB. I'm just gonna get rid of these comments because I know what everything does and I'm confident that I will remember in the future. And I'm not a big fan of how comments look, but you should practice just putting them after a line of code you're not sure about. After initializing move speed, set onGround equal to true, because when we start we will be on ground. And set RB equal to get component of type rigid body. And that will just fetch our player's rigid body component. Now we want to make another float, so public float jump force. Now inside of here, just set jump force equal to 7. Next, in the update method, we want to check if we're on the ground and if we're pressing the spacebar. So if on ground sorry, I just need to fix my brackets, and if input dot get button down jump sorry, I did that in the last tutorial as well. Then we can obviously now make our player jump, but how would we go about doing that? Well, remember our rigid body component we declared? Well, we can now use that because we declared it for a reason. So say rb.velocity is equal to a new vector3 0f jump force 0f. Now you might be wondering what the frick is going on there. Before I explain, after that you want to set onGround equal to false again, because while we're jumping we're obviously not in the air. So what this does is the velocity is added on by a vector3. Now a vector3 is a point on the screen. If I open up paint, a vector3 is a specific point on the screen. Like in this case, this would be a vector2. It would be a certain amount x and a certain amount y. Now in Unity, the coordinate system is different from Java and GameMaker. GameMaker, that is where 0, 0 is located. Let me just make my brush thicker. However, in Unity, this is how everything is. Or Unity3D. This is 0, 0, 0. This is Z, this is Y, this is X. Alright? And now a vector3 basically takes all those components, vector3, and these are the arguments, by the way. You might not be able to see, but I'll scale it up for you. A vector3 takes all those components and basically uses them in one specific object or variable. So just keep that in mind whenever you're working with vector maths. So our velocity is equal to a new vector3. Remember, that's a point on the screen, or like the summary there says, it creates a new vector with given x, y, and z components. In this case, we want our cube to jump upwards on the y-axis. So we just say set the velocity equal to a vector3 with the jump force component. But you can see that if we run this, we'll always be able to jump, like infinitely. Like if we keep on pressing space, then we'll always be able to jump. We don't want that. We're not making Flappy Bird. We're making a basic 3D platformer. So what you want to do is you want to make void on collision enter collision other. Now what this method does, it's a built-in method in Unity. It checks if this object is colliding with something, but obviously at the moment it checks for everything, so we can jump off of trees is what I'm trying to say. So we need to narrow down what we want to test. So we say if other dot game object dot compare tag ground sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble. So I forgot the extra parenthesis there. So now we're checking if our cube is touching ground, or an object tagged with ground, and if it is, then on ground will be equal to true. So there we go. This is our basic movement system, jumping, moving around. So what you want to do is you want to save it using Control S, wait for Unity to update the script, and as you can see, jump force gets shown and on ground gets shown. But before we do anything, remember how we said that the only way we can jump is if we detect whether we're touching a ground object or not. Our object is named ground, but it's not tagged ground. So click on tag, add tag, plus, remember to spell it the exact same way as you did in your script. Go back here and select ground. So when we run the game, as you can see, we can now jump around, and we cannot jump infinitely. So yeah, I really hope that you found this tutorial useful, and that yep, that's another problem we need to fix. Before I go to your player, go to your rigid body, click on constraints, freeze the position on all axes. Next, you want to run the game, and don't do that. Don't freeze the position on the y-axis, else you won't be able to fall. And there we go. This is how you make a cube move in Unity. It's not that simple. Go over the code again. 2 floats, move speed and jump force, pretty self-explanatory. A public boolean, and a boolean is a value that returns true or false, or bool. In Java it's called a boolean, but in C# it's bool. On ground. A private rigid body RB. In start, declare move speed with a value of 5, jump force with a value of 7. On ground will be equal to true in the beginning, and RB is getting our rigid body component. In update, we're always moving our character every frame by the input we give it. In this case, it's input.getAxis multiplied by time.delta_time. And remember, time.delta_time makes it so that people with higher end computers don't get an advantage over people with lower end computers. Well, it works with frame rates. We're checking if we're on the ground, and if we are on the ground, if we're pressing up, then we want to jump by adding a new vector 3 as a velocity to our rigid body, and put jump force as the actual jump velocity. Then just set on ground equal to false. And the way we check if we're on the ground is say void on collision enter collision other. If other.gameObject.compare tag ground, if that statement is true, set on ground equal to true. And all of this code will give you a very nice and very satisfying result of a cube just being able to move around. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will be releasing the latest HTML your first website tutorial later on today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and bye.